The rain was pouring down on the glass windows of the 62nd floor office when Robert Chen got the call that would change everything. His assistant's voice was shaking as she told him about the photos. His 28-year-old son, David, had been seen at a small farming market, holding hands with a woman who sold vegetables from a wooden stand. Robert dropped his phone and stared at his computer screen. For 40 years, he had built his technology empire from nothing. He started with a small software company in his garage and turned it into a billion-dollar business. Every decision, every sacrifice, every long night at the office was for one reason: to create a legacy for his son David. But David had always been different. While other rich kids spent their time at fancy clubs or on expensive vacations, David preferred reading books about environmental science and volunteering at local community centers. Robert had hoped his son would grow out of this phase, but at 28, David seemed more determined than ever to go his own way. The next morning, Robert drove to David's apartment in downtown Los Angeles. He rarely visited his son's simple, two-bedroom place, preferring to meet at expensive restaurants or his own mansion. But today was different. Today, he needed answers. David opened the door wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, looking surprised to see his father. "Dad? What are you doing here so early?" Robert pushed past his son into the apartment. The place was nothing like his own luxury home. There were plants everywhere, books about farming and sustainability covering every surface, and photos of David working with his hands, building houses for charity, teaching kids to garden, helping at food banks. "We need to talk," Robert said, his voice cold and controlled. David poured coffee into two mismatched cups and sat across from his father at a small wooden table. "If this is about the business merger, I already told you I'm not interested in running the Singapore office." "This isn't about business," Robert said, pulling out his phone. He showed David the photos his private investigator had taken. "This is about her." The photos showed David laughing with a young woman at a farmer's market. She had long dark hair tied back in a simple ponytail and wore a faded denim jacket. In one photo, David was helping her load boxes of vegetables into an old pickup truck. In another, they were sharing ice cream, looking at each other like they were the only two people in the world. David's face changed when he saw the photos. "You had me followed?" "Her name is Luna Martinez," Robert continued, ignoring his son's question. 26 years old. She owns a small organic farm about 2 hours outside the city. Her family came here from Mexico when she was 5 years old. Her father worked construction. Her mother cleaned houses. She has a high school education and makes maybe $30,000 a year selling vegetables. "Stop," David said quietly. But Robert wasn't finished. "You've been seeing her for 8 months. You drive to her farm every weekend. You help her with the work. You've met her family. They think you're just a regular guy who works in an office." David stood up and walked to the window. "She doesn't know who you are, does she?" Robert asked. "I told her my father was in business. I never said what kind or how much money we had," David said. "She's not like that, Dad. She doesn't care about money." "Everyone cares about money," Robert replied. "Especially poor people. She's not poor. She works hard. She owns her land. She supports her family. Just because she doesn't have millions in the bank doesn't make her poor." Robert had heard enough. He stood up and straightened his expensive suit jacket. "You have a choice to make, David. You can keep playing farmer with this girl, or you can take your place in the family business, but you can't do both." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means if you want to throw your life away on some vegetable seller, don't expect me to fund it. No more trust fund payments, no more credit cards, no more apartment rent, no more car payments, nothing." David turned around, his face red with anger. "You think money is the only thing that matters. Money is freedom. Money is security. Money is power. Without it, you're nothing. That girl might seem sweet now, but wait until the bills pile up. Wait until you can't afford to take her on nice dates or buy her pretty things. See how much she loves you then. You don't know her at all." Robert walked toward the door. "I know enough. I know she'll leave you the moment things get tough, and I know you'll come crawling back to me when she does. What if I don't? What if I choose her? Robert paused with his hand on the doorknob. Then you're no son of mine. After his father left, David sat alone in his apartment for hours. He thought about Luna, working in her fields under the hot sun, her hands dirty from the soil but her smile brighter than any diamond. He thought about the first time he met her at the farmer's market 6 months ago, how she had patiently explained the difference between heirloom tomatoes and regular ones, how her eyes lit up when she talked about sustainable farming. He had never told her about his family's money because he wanted her to love him for who he was, not what he had. But now his father's words echoed in his mind. Would Luna stay with him if he had nothing? Could their love survive without financial security? That evening, David drove the 2 hours to Luna's farm. It was a beautiful piece of land with rolling hills and neat rows of vegetables stretching toward the horizon. Luna's small house sat in the middle of it all, painted bright yellow with a red front door. There were wind chimes hanging from the porch and a vegetable garden right outside the kitchen window. Luna met him at the door, wearing overalls and a worried expression. You look upset. What's wrong? David sat on her porch steps and told her everything. About his father's visit, about the ultimatum, about the photos. Luna listened without saying a word, her face growing more serious with each detail. When he finished, Luna was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. So your father is Robert Chen. The Robert Chen who owns Chen Technologies. You know who he is? David, everyone knows who he is. He's one of the richest men in the country. Luna sat down beside him. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to love me, not my bank account. And you thought I would only care about your money? I didn't know what to think. My father says everyone has a price. Luna stood up and walked to the edge of the porch. The sun was setting behind her fields, painting everything golden. Your father doesn't know me. He thinks because I work with my hands and don't have much money, I must be some kind of gold digger. I know you're not. Do you? Luna turned around to face him. Because if you did, you would have told me the truth from the beginning. You would have trusted me enough to know that I fell in love with the man who spent his Saturday afternoons helping me weed my garden, not some rich guy's son. David felt terrible. She was right. He had been protecting himself, not her. What are you going to do? Luna asked. I don't know. He's cutting me off completely if I don't end things with you. And if you do end things with me, you get to keep your comfortable life and eventually run his company. David looked up at her. I don't want his company. I want you. Luna smiled for the first time that evening. Then I guess we'll figure out how to make it work without his money. That night, as they sat on her porch talking about their future, David made a decision that would surprise everyone, especially his father. He was going to prove that love was stronger than money, and that sometimes the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought. 3 weeks had passed since Robert's ultimatum, and David hadn't contacted his father once. He had moved out of his fancy apartment and was staying in a small guest room at Luna's farm. Every morning, he woke up before sunrise to help her with the daily tasks, feeding the chickens, watering the plants, and harvesting vegetables for the weekend market. His hands, once soft from years of office work, were now rough and dirty. His expensive clothes had been replaced with simple jeans and work shirts. But something strange was happening. David had never felt more alive. One evening, as they sat on the porch after a long day of work, David surprised Luna with a question that changed everything. Will you marry me? Luna nearly dropped the glass of lemonade she was holding. What did you say? David got down on one knee, but instead of pulling out an expensive ring, he held up a simple band he had made from twisted copper wire. I know this isn't the fancy proposal you probably dreamed about. I can't afford a diamond ring or a big wedding. But I love you, Luna. I want to spend my life with you, whether we're rich or poor. Luna stared at him, her eyes filling with tears. David, you don't have to prove anything to me. I don't need you to marry me just to show your father you're serious. That's not why I'm asking. I'm asking because I realized something these past few weeks. Living here with you, working the Land being part of something real. This is the life I want. Not my father's world of boardrooms and business deals. This world. Your world. Our world. Luna was quiet for a long moment. Your father will never accept me. Then that's his loss. David, you don't understand what you're giving up. Your inheritance, your future, your family. You're my future now, David said, standing up and taking her hands. The money, the business, the fancy lifestyle, none of that matters if I'm not happy, and I'm only happy when I'm with you. Luna looked into his eyes and saw the truth there. This wasn't about rebellion against his father anymore. This was about love. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. The next morning, David called his father for the first time in 3 weeks. Robert answered on the first ring, as if he had been waiting by the phone. Have you come to your senses? Robert asked without saying hello. I'm getting married, Dad. Next month. I wanted to invite you to the wedding. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Robert's voice, cold and controlled. If you marry that girl, you'll lose everything. Your trust fund, your position in the company, your inheritance. Everything. I know. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Robert hung up without another word. Planning a wedding with no money was harder than David had expected. Luna's family tried to help, but they didn't have much either. Her mother, Rosa, worked extra shifts at the restaurant where she waited tables. Her father, Carlos, used his construction contacts to get materials for decorating the church at cost. Her younger brother, Miguel, who was studying music in community college, offered to play guitar at the ceremony. David felt embarrassed that he couldn't contribute more. All his life, money had solved every problem. Need a good restaurant reservation? Money. Want front row concert tickets? Money. Planning a wedding? Money. But now, without his father's financial support, he had to learn how to make things work with creativity instead of cash. Luna found her wedding dress at a thrift store for $30. It was simple white cotton with small buttons down the back. When David saw her try it on, he thought she looked more beautiful than any model in the expensive fashion magazines he used to see in his father's office. Are you sure about this? Luna asked him one evening as they addressed handwritten invitations at her kitchen table. It's not too late to change your mind. You could call your father, apologize, go back to your old life. David looked up from the invitation he was writing. Do you want me to change my mind? No. But I want you to be sure. Really sure. Because once we do this, there's no going back. Your father made that clear. David reached across the table and took her hand. Luna, 3 months ago, I thought success meant having a corner office and a 7-figure bank account. Now I know that success means waking up next to the person you love and building something meaningful together. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The wedding was set for a Saturday afternoon at the small Catholic church where Luna's family had been members for 20 years. Father Rodriguez, who had known Luna since she was a little girl, agreed to perform the ceremony. The reception would be held right there at the farm, under the big oak tree where David had first told Luna he loved her. As the day approached, David found himself thinking about his father more and more. Despite everything, he hoped Robert would change his mind and come to the wedding. He even drove to his father's office building one afternoon and sat in his car in the parking garage, thinking about going upstairs. But in the end, he drove home without getting out of the car. 2 days before the wedding, Luna's extended family started arriving from all over California. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends filled every spare bed and couch in the area. The house was alive with laughter, cooking smells, and the sound of children playing in the yard. David had never experienced anything like it. His own family. Gatherings had always been formal affairs with catered food and stilted conversation. But Luna's family welcomed him like he had always been one of them. They taught him card games, shared stories about Luna's childhood, and included him in all their traditions. On Friday night, Luna's female relatives held a small party for her while the men gathered around Carlos to to give David advice about marriage. It was exactly the opposite of the bachelor party David's wealthy friends would have thrown. No expensive liquor or wild entertainment, just good food, honest conversation, and genuine friendship. "You know," Carlos told David as they sat on the porch watching the stars, "when Luna first told us about you, we were worried. Rich boy, fancy car, different world from ours. We thought maybe you were just playing around with our girl." "I understand why you felt that way," David replied. "But these past few weeks, watching you work beside her, seeing how you look at her, how you've changed your whole life for her, we know now that you really love her, more than I ever thought possible." Carlos clapped him on the shoulder. "Then you're going to be just fine." The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Luna woke up in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by her sisters and cousins. David spent the morning at Miguel's apartment, getting ready with Luna's brother and male cousins. As David put on his simple black suit, the only formal clothing he had left, he thought about his father. In a few hours he would be married to the woman he loved. He would officially be cut off from his family's fortune. He would be starting a new life with nothing but love and hope. And for the first time in his adult life, David felt completely free. At 2 o'clock, guests started arriving at the little church. Luna's side filled up quickly with family, friends, and people from the farming community who had watched her grow up. David's side had only a few people, some co-workers from his old job who had become real friends, and surprisingly, his college roommate Jake, who had driven down from San Francisco. As the ceremony began and Luna walked down the aisle in her $30 dress, David knew he had made the right choice. His father's money couldn't buy what he felt in that moment. This was real, this was love, this was home. 6 months had passed since the wedding, and David was learning that married life on a farm was nothing like the romantic picture he had imagined. His back ached every morning from the physical labor. His hands were permanently stained with dirt under the fingernails, and the bank account he shared with Luna rarely had more than a few $100s in it. But something amazing was happening that neither of them had expected. It started on a Tuesday morning when David was loading vegetables into Luna's old pickup truck for the weekly farmers market. He had been going to these markets with her for months now, mostly just helping carry boxes and arrange the display. But that day, he noticed something that bothered him. "Luna, why are we selling these tomatoes for $3 a pound when the organic store in the city charges $8 for the same thing?" Luna wiped sweat from her forehead and shrugged. "Because that's what Mr. Henderson pays us. He's been our distributor for 5 years. But you're doing all the work. Growing, harvesting, packing. He just drives them to the city and marks up the price. You should be getting more money for your hard work." "David, that's just how it works. Small farmers like us don't have connections to big stores or fancy restaurants. We need middlemen like Henderson." David spent the rest of the day thinking about this problem. That evening, while Luna was cooking dinner, he sat at their small kitchen table with a notebook and pen. He started writing down numbers. How much it cost to grow the vegetables, how much they sold them for, how much the final customer paid. "What are you working on?" Luna asked, setting a plate of beans and rice in front of him. "I'm trying to understand your business. Luna, do you realize that for every dollar a customer spends on your tomatoes, you only get about 25 cents? I never really thought about it that way. What if we could get you 50 cents, or even 75 cents? You could make 3 times more money without growing a single extra tomato." Luna sat down across from him, interested now. "How?" "By cutting out the middleman. What if we sold directly to restaurants and stores?" "David, I've tried that before. They want huge quantities that I can't produce. And they want deliveries twice a week, perfect packaging, insurance certificates. I'm just one person with a small farm." David's eyes lit up. "What if you weren't just one person? What if you were part of a group?" Over the next few weeks, David started visiting other small farms in the area. He met Carlos Herrera, who grew the best corn in the county but could barely pay his bills. He talked to Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman who raised organic chickens but had no idea how to market them online. He visited the Rodriguez family, who made amazing goat cheese but only sold it at one local market. Each farmer had the same problems: great products, but no way to reach customers who would pay fair prices. For quality food, what if we worked together? David suggested at an informal meeting he organized at Luna's farm. What if we created a cooperative where we could share resources, split delivery costs, and negotiate better prices as a group? Sounds good in theory, Carlos said, scratching his head. But who's going to organize all that? Who's going to talk to the fancy restaurant owners? Who's going to handle the paperwork and the money? Everyone looked at David. He had never run a farming business before, but he had spent years in his father's company learning about logistics, marketing, and negotiation. "I'll do it," David said. "I'll handle the business side if you all handle the farming side." Mrs. Chen laughed. "No offense, David, but what do you know about selling vegetables?" David smiled. "You're right. I don't know much about farming, but I know about business. I know how to create websites, how to calculate profit margins, how to negotiate contracts. I know how to talk to restaurant managers and store buyers because I used to be one of those customers who bought expensive organic food without thinking about where it came from." Luna watched her husband with amazement. For months she had worried that David was unhappy, that he missed his old comfortable life. But now she saw a fire in his eyes that she had never seen before. He wasn't just trying to help her farm, he was finding his own purpose. The first month was rough. David spent hours on his laptop creating a website for their new cooperative called Valley Fresh Partners. He designed simple logos, wrote product descriptions, and took professional-looking photos of everyone's produce with Luna's old camera. His first big break came when he remembered a restaurant owner named Antonio, who used to cater events at his father's company. David swallowed his pride and called Antonio directly. "David Chen, Robert Chen's son. I heard you got married and your father cut you off. What are you doing now?" "I'm working with local farmers, Antonio. We grow the best organic vegetables you've ever tasted, and we can deliver them fresh twice a week at better prices than your current supplier." Antonio was curious enough to try a sample order. When David and Luna delivered the first boxes of vegetables, Antonio was impressed. "This corn is incredible. Where has this farmer been all my life? 20 minutes outside the city, struggling to make ends meet because no one knew how good his products were." Within 3 months, Valley Fresh Partners was delivering to 12 restaurants in the city. David had figured out efficient delivery routes, created professional packaging with each farm's story printed on the labels, and even started a small online store where city customers could order weekly boxes of fresh produce. But the real magic happened when the farmers started working together in ways David had never imagined. Carlos taught Mrs. Chen how to improve her soil. She shared her secret for natural pest control. The Rodriguez family started making special cheeses flavored with herbs from Luna's garden. Luna began growing specific vegetables that the restaurants requested. "You know what's funny?" Luna told David one evening as they counted the day's earnings. "We're making more money now, but it's not really about the money anymore." "What do you mean?" "I mean, for the first time, I feel like what we're doing matters. We're not just growing food and hoping someone buys it. We're part of something bigger. We're feeding families in the city, supporting each other, building something together." David understood exactly what she meant. At his father's company, success was measured only by quarterly profits and stock prices. But here, success meant Carlos being able to fix his truck, Mrs. Chen being able to afford her diabetes medication, and the Rodriguez children getting new school supplies. The cooperative grew slowly but steadily. Word spread through the farming community about the young couple who were helping small farmers get fair prices for their products. More families joined the group. David learned to drive a delivery truck, negotiated with insurance companies, and even figured out how to accept credit card payments on a tablet. One evening, 6 months after starting the cooperative, David was updating the website when he got an unexpected phone call. "Is this David Chen from Valley Fresh Partners?" The voice was professional, businesslike. "Yes, this is David. My name is Jennifer Walsh from Sustainable Business Magazine. We're doing a story about innovative agricultural partnerships, and your cooperative keeps coming up in our research. Would you be interested in an interview?" David looked around their small living room, which had become the unofficial headquarters of their growing business. Luna was at the kitchen table, carefully packing orders for the next day's deliveries. Through the window, he could see their fields under the evening sky. Sure, David said. I'd be happy to talk about what we're doing. After the call, Luna looked up from her packing. Who is that? A magazine wants to write about our cooperative. Luna smiled. Your father always said you'd never amount to anything without his money. David walked over and kissed the top of her head. My father was wrong about a lot of things. As he looked at the life they had built together, David realized that losing his inheritance had been the best thing that ever happened to him. He had found something worth more than money: purpose, community, and a love that grew stronger every day. The magazine article about Valley Fresh Partners changed everything. Within 2 weeks of the story being published, David's phone was ringing, constantly. Restaurant owners from 3 different cities wanted to partner with them. Food bloggers were writing about their farm-to-table revolution, and most surprisingly, other farming communities from across the state were asking David to help them start similar cooperatives. But it was the email from Isabella Romano that really caught David's attention. Isabella owned Romano's, one of the most expensive restaurants in Los Angeles. Her family had been in the restaurant business for 4 generations, and she was known for being extremely picky about ingredients. Her email was short and direct. I want to meet with you. Can you come to my restaurant tomorrow at 2 p.m.? David had eaten at Romano's once years ago, when his father was trying to impress a business client. One meal had cost more than most of their farmers made in a week. He almost deleted the email, thinking Isabella would never understand their mission of fair prices for small farmers. But Luna convinced him to go. What's the worst that can happen? She says no, and we're right back where we started. The next day, David drove to the city wearing his best shirt and the one nice pair of pants he still owned. Romano's looked exactly as he remembered: elegant, sophisticated, intimidating. He felt out of place the moment he walked through the door. Isabella Romano was a woman in her 40s with silver hair and sharp eyes. She led David to a quiet corner table and got straight to business. I read about your cooperative. I've been looking for suppliers who can guarantee truly fresh, organic produce with a good story behind it. My customers care about where their food comes from. David explained how Valley Fresh Partners worked, the 23 farming families who had joined, the twice-weekly delivery system, the way they supported each other. Interesting, Isabella said. But I have a bigger idea. What if instead of just selling to restaurants, you created your own brand? What if people could buy Valley Fresh products in grocery stores across the state? David nearly choked on his water. That would require massive production increases, packaging facilities, distribution networks. We're talking about millions of dollars in startup costs. Isabella smiled. What if I told you I know investors who would be very interested in backing the right agricultural venture? Over the next hour, Isabella explained her vision. She had connections throughout the food industry: store buyers, distribution companies, marketing agencies. More importantly, she believed that consumers were ready to pay premium prices for food that came with a guarantee of fair farmer treatment and environmental sustainability. But there's one condition, Isabella said as their meeting ended. If we do this, you'd need to move beyond just your local area. We'd need to bring farming cooperatives from all over California into one big network. Can you handle that kind of expansion? David's head was spinning as he drove back to Luna's farm. That evening he told her about Isabella's proposal while they sat on their porch watching the sunset. It sounds amazing, Luna said carefully, but also terrifying. We'd be responsible for hundreds of farming families. What if something goes wrong? What if something goes right? David replied. Luna, we could change how agriculture works in this entire state. Small farmers wouldn't have to choose between going broke or selling their land to big corporations. Over the next month, David found himself traveling constantly. He drove to farming communities in Central California, where grape growers were struggling with drought and falling prices. He visited dairy farmers in the north who couldn't compete with factory farms. He met vegetable growers in the south who were being pushed out by housing developments. Everywhere he went, the story was the same. Good people working hard, producing quality food, but barely surviving because they had no power in the marketplace. David started holding meetings in community centers and church halls, explaining how cooperative partnerships could help. At first, many farmers were skeptical. They had heard promises before from outsiders who claimed they wanted to help, but David had something different to offer: proof. He brought Carlos, Mrs. Chen, and other Valley Fresh Partners farmers with him to these meetings. They could speak farmer to farmer about how their lives had actually improved. 6 months ago, I was thinking about selling my farm and moving to the city to find work, Carlos told a room full of struggling farmers in Fresno. Now my kids can stay in the same school, my wife doesn't have to work 2 jobs, and I'm proud of what I do again. Slowly, the network grew. David learned to navigate complicated logistics, coordinating harvest schedules across different climate zones, managing delivery routes that covered hundreds of miles, negotiating contracts with stores that wanted massive quantities delivered on exact schedules. Luna became his partner in ways she had never expected. Her natural ability to connect with people made her the perfect person to visit new farming families and help them understand how the cooperative worked. She also had an eye for quality that restaurant owners trusted completely. The breakthrough came when Isabella introduced them to a grocery store chain called Fresh Choice Markets. The chain's owner, Kevin Walsh, was looking for a way to differentiate his stores from big competitors like Walmart and Target. Customers want to feel good about where they shop, Kevin explained during a meeting at his headquarters. If I can tell them that buying Valley Fresh products directly supports family farmers and sustainable agriculture, that's a story they'll pay extra for. The first test was launching Valley Fresh products in 5 Fresh Choice stores around Los Angeles. David was terrified. They were going from selling to individual restaurants to having their products on grocery store shelves where thousands of people would see them every day. Luna designed the packaging herself using simple graphics that told each farming family's story. The tomatoes came with a label that said, "Grown by the Herrera family. 4 generations of sustainable farming." The eggs had pictures of Mrs. Chen's chickens roaming freely in pastures. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Valley Fresh products sold out in the first week. Customers were calling the stores asking when they would get more. Food bloggers were posting pictures on social media. Local news stations started running stories about the farmer cooperative that's changing agriculture. Within 6 months, Fresh Choice wanted Valley Fresh products in all 37 of their California stores. Other grocery chains started calling, asking if they could carry the products too. David found himself managing a business that was generating over $2 million in annual revenue. But the most important number wasn't the total sales. It was the fact that 127 farming families were now earning enough money to keep their land, support their families, and plan for the future. The success attracted attention from unexpected places. Agricultural colleges invited David to speak about cooperative business models. Environmental groups praised Valley Fresh for proving that sustainable farming could be profitable. Even some politicians started mentioning them as an example of successful rural economic development. But the attention that mattered most to David came from someone much closer to home. One evening, as he was updating the cooperative's website, with news about their latest expansion, Luna's phone rang. She answered it in the kitchen, and David could hear her voice getting more and more surprised. "David," she called out after hanging up. "That was my cousin Maria. She works as a housekeeper for some rich family in Beverly Hills. She said her employer was talking about Valley Fresh at a dinner party last night. Apparently it's become fashionable among wealthy people to say they only buy from our cooperative because it supports small farmers." David laughed. "Your cousin's employer probably has no idea that the CEO of Valley Fresh Partners used to be cut off by his billionaire father for marrying a farmer. Actually," Luna said with a strange expression on her face, "she might know exactly who you are." Maria said the woman mentioned that the cooperative was started by Robert Chen's son. She said your father has been asking around about what you're doing. David stopped typing and looked at his wife. For 2 years he had built this new life without any contact from his father. He had assumed Robert had written him off completely. "What do you think that means?" Luna asked. David thought about all the farming families who now depended on the cooperative, all the restaurants serving Valley Fresh produce, all the customers who had learned to care about where their food came from. He thought about the life he and Luna had built together, based on hard work and helping others succeed. "I think," David said slowly, It means my father is starting to realize that maybe I didn't throw my life away after all. 3 years had passed since David walked away from his father's ultimatum, and Robert Chen was having trouble sleeping. Every month, his private investigator delivered a new report about his son's activities. The reports had started simple. David was working on Luna's farm, living in a small house, apparently happy despite having no money. But the recent reports were different. They talked about business partnerships, media coverage, and something called Valley Fresh Partners that was generating millions in revenue. Robert had dismissed the early reports as exaggerations, but now major newspapers were writing about his son's agricultural cooperative. Food industry magazines were calling David an innovator. Business schools were studying Valley Fresh as a case study in successful social entrepreneurship. Robert's business associates had started mentioning the cooperative at dinner parties, praising the quality of the produce and the feel-good story behind it. None of them knew David was his son, but Robert found himself listening to their praise with a mixture of pride and confusion. How had the boy he thought was throwing his life away built something that impressed people Robert himself respected? The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning when Robert's assistant brought him his usual stack of business journals. On the cover of California Business Weekly was a photo of David and Luna standing in a field, surrounded by dozens of farming families. The headline read, "The $5 million Farm Revolution: How Two Young Entrepreneurs Are Changing Agriculture." Robert stared at the photo for a long time. His son looked older, more confident. His hands were rough from work, his face tanned from the sun. But his eyes had something Robert had never seen before, a sense of purpose, of belonging. The article described how Valley Fresh Partners now worked with over 200 farming families. Across California, supplied 85 restaurants and had products in 150 grocery stores. It talked about David's innovative approach to fair trade agriculture and Luna's expertise in sustainable farming practices. It mentioned their recent expansion into Nevada and Oregon. But what shocked Robert most was the financial information. Valley Fresh Partners had generated $5.2 million in revenue last year, with 78% of that money going directly to farming families. David and Luna's own salaries were modest. They paid themselves less than Robert spent on his monthly car payments. But they had built something that was clearly profitable and growing fast. That evening, Robert made a decision that surprised even himself. He got in his car and drove the 2 hours to Luna's farm. He had never been to the property before, and he wasn't prepared for what he found. The small yellow house he expected was still there, but it was surrounded by new buildings, a large warehouse, an office complex, and several barns. Trucks were being loaded with produce. Workers in Valley Fresh Partners t-shirts were organizing deliveries. It looked like a real business operation. Robert parked his expensive car between 2 delivery trucks and walked toward the main office building. Through the windows, he could see David at a desk, talking on the phone while looking at computer screens showing what appeared to be delivery routes and inventory numbers. Luna saw him first. She was walking out of the warehouse carrying a clipboard, when she stopped and stared. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she walked over to where he stood. "Mr. Chen," she said politely, "this is unexpected. I wanted to see what my son has been doing." Luna looked back toward the office where David was still on his phone call. "He doesn't know you're here?" "No, I wasn't sure he would want to see me. He talks about you sometimes," Luna said carefully. "He misses you more than he admits." Before Robert could respond, David appeared in the doorway of the office building. He had finished his phone call and was looking for Luna when he saw his father standing in the parking lot. For several long moments, father and son just stared at each other. Finally, David walked over. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I came to see what you've built." David glanced around at the busy operation surrounding them. "This is Valley Fresh Partners, our main distribution center." "I can see that." Robert looked at the workers, the trucks, the organized activity. "I've been reading about your business in the newspapers." "Have you?" "David, I owe you an apology." Those words hung in the air between them. Luna quietly excused herself, sensing that this conversation needed to happen between father and son alone. "3 years ago, I told you that marrying Luna would ruin your life," Robert continued. I told you that without money you'd amount to nothing. I was wrong." David didn't respond immediately. He had imagined this conversation many times, but now that it was happening, he wasn't sure what to say. "You want to see what we do here?" David asked finally. For the next 2 hours, David gave his father a complete tour of the operation. He showed him the refrigerated storage areas where produce from dozens of farms was organized for delivery. He explained the quality control process that ensured every product met their standards. He introduced Robert to the logistics team that coordinated deliveries across 3 states. Robert met Carlos, whose corn was now served in some of the best restaurants in California. He talked to Mrs. Chen, who had expanded her chicken operation and hired 3 full-time employees. He saw the Rodriguez family's cheese-making facility, which had grown from a small home operation to a regional supplier. "All these people work for you?" Robert asked as they walked through the main warehouse. "They don't work for me, Dad. We work together. Everyone who joins Valley Fresh Partners keeps ownership of their own farm. We just help them get better prices and reach bigger markets." "And you make money from this?" "We take a small percentage to cover our operating costs and pay our staff. But most of the profit goes directly to the farming families. Our job isn't to get rich. It's to make sure the people who grow the food can make a decent living doing it." Robert stopped walking and looked at his son. "You could have made much more money in traditional business." "Maybe. But I wouldn't have been as happy." As the sun began to set, David and Robert sat on the porch of the original farmhouse where David and Luna had first lived. Luna brought them coffee and then left them alone to talk. "Your mother would have been proud of you," Robert said quietly. David's mother had died when he was 12, and Robert rarely talked about her. "She always said the most important thing was to help other people," David replied. "She said that to me too. I forgot it somewhere along the way." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the workers finish loading the last delivery truck of the day. "I have a confession," Robert said eventually. "I've been buying Valley Fresh products for months. My housekeeper orders them online. I told myself I was just curious about what you were doing, but honestly, they're the best vegetables I've ever eaten." David smiled. "Luna will be happy to hear that. She's very proud of the quality standards we maintain." "David, I want to invest in your company." David looked at his father with surprise. "Dad, we're doing fine. We don't need your money." "I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a business partnership. You've proven that this model works. With additional capital, you could expand faster, help more farming families, maybe even take the concept national. Why would you want to do that?" Robert was quiet for a long time before answering. "Because I spent 40 years building a technology company that makes money but doesn't really help anyone. You've built something that makes money and makes the world better at the same time. I'd like to be part of that." David studied his father's face, looking for signs that this was some kind of manipulation or attempt to regain control over his life. But what he saw was genuine respect and perhaps a little regret for the years they had lost. "There would be conditions," David said carefully. "Luna and I maintain complete control over operations. The mission doesn't change. We're here to help farming families, not to maximize profits for investors." "Agreed. And you can't interfere with how we run things. We do business differently than your company does." "I'm counting on that." As Robert prepared to leave that evening, Luna walked him to his car. "Thank you for coming," she said. "It means more to him than he'll probably tell you. Thank you for taking care of my son, and for helping him become the man he was meant to be. He did that himself. I just gave him the space to figure it out." Robert drove home that night thinking about the conversation. His son had built something remarkable, something that combined profit with purpose in a way Robert had never considered possible. But more than that, David had found happiness in work, in marriage, in life. The next morning, Robert called his lawyer and his accountant. He had a business partnership to negotiate and a relationship with his son to rebuild. It had taken 3 years, but Robert finally understood that the most valuable things in life couldn't be measured in dollars alone. And for the first time in years, Robert Chen felt proud, not just of what he owned, but of what his family had accomplished.